special guest with us today. So like the rest of you, I'm going to be sitting here taking notes. John, welcome to the call.
Our next speaker was one of the principal investigators of the study. Dr. Karelis is a professor, Department of Exercise Science at the University of Quebec in Montreal, and a researcher at the University Institute of Geriatric Research at Montreal. Dr. Karelis received his PhD in exercise science from the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Montreal. His specialization was in muscle fatigue. He did a postdoctoral fellowship at the Faculty of Medicine, Department of Nutrition, University of Montreal, specializing in the characterization of subgroups of obesity. Dr. Karelis' expertise is in the field of exercise physiology and clinical research, as well as in factors regulating cardiometabolic disturbances, body composition, energy expenditure, and muscle strength in type 2 diabetes and obesity. In particular, his research investigates the characteristics and potential mechanisms underlying two unique subgroups of obesity: metabolically healthy but obese and metabolically obese normal weight individuals. He has extensive experience in clinical intervention studies which include different exercise training programs and nutritional protocols in different at-risk populations. He's published 105 peer-reviewed articles and supervised graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Karelis to our call today.
Thank you, Mr. John Molson, for that introduction. I also like to thank Immunotech, as well as our hosts, Mr. Keith Hooper and Mr. John Sullivan, for inviting me. So, and also I'd like to thank everybody here for tuning in. Okay, I hope everybody can see this. So mainly what I'm going to talk about is going to be the study that we did with Immunotech. So the title of that study was the effect of cysteine-rich whey protein, which was the Immunocol product, supplementation, and it was in combination with resistance training on muscle strength and lean body mass in non-frail elderly subjects. It was a randomized double-blind controlled study. So I'd just like to give an introduction about what happens with how muscle strength and muscle mass evolves throughout time. So if you look in the first couple decades of life, which is early in life, you see that there is a nice increase in muscle mass and strength. And then look what happens at the fourth decade of life. There starts to be a decrease in muscle strength and muscle mass. So here you see some people actually with this decrease is actually better maintained, but there's a large population also that will have a very big decrease in their muscle mass and strength, to the point where they're probably going to eventually hit what we call this disability threshold right here. And if they do that and they continue going down, well, eventually they're going to need some kind of rehabilitation, and also the quality of life is going to decrease very much. But the good news is you can do something about this. You can do some environmental changes here. Specifically, you can change your lifestyle habits and able to attenuate this decrease of muscle strength and muscle mass. But what I also would like to point out, and this is something that you can also say to others here, that prevention is key. So this decrease in muscle strength and muscle mass starts at the fourth decade of life. It decreases about 1% every year and then accelerates even more. So if someone wants to intervene earlier here enough, they will be able to prevent problems with their health later on in life. Now, so what is something that you can do in terms of the lifestyle habits? Well, resistance training is one of them, and resistance training has been shown by multiple studies that it can easily increase muscle mass and also muscle strength. Okay, that is actually something that is well established. Now, also another factor here is inadequate protein intake, especially in the elderly, that we know that is also associated with a decrease in muscle mass and muscle strength. Now, it's come to the point where in the scientific literature, it is now recommended that we incorporate both resistance training programs and an inadequate protein intake. Specifically, we're looking at about 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein intake for good maintenance of muscle mass and muscle strength in the elderly population. So before I introduce the study, I'd just like to mention that, as shown by Dr. Gutman, that glutathione is a powerful antioxidant. And what happens is with this powerful antioxidant, if it decreases in our body, it could affect our muscle mass and our muscle strength. So we know that cysteine is a precursor of a glutathione. So in Immunocal, it is a cysteine-rich whey protein that will help you increase the levels of glutathione. So this is the study that we did with Immunocal. It was published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging. And as I mentioned earlier, the title of that study was The Effects of Cysteine-Rich Whey Protein, Immunocal Product, Supplementation, was in combination with resistant training on muscle strength and lean body mass in non-frail elderly subjects. And what's important here that I'd like to point out is the scientific rigor of how this was done. It was a randomized double-blind control study, which is the highest standard of doing a scientific study. And this was published back in October 2014. Now I'm just going to go through a little bit of the methods, how this was done. So we only included elderly participants. We're talking about 65 years and above. And then after, what we did is we measured their muscle strength and body composition testing here that we did. I'll show you exactly how that was done in the next slide. And then after, we were able to recruit 99 participants. And again, it was a double-blind randomized controlled study. So we made two groups here. One group was what we call the casein group, and the other group was what we call here the Immunocal group. And they both performed the same intervention in terms of resistant training, and they both took their respective product here. In the casein group, there was a dropout after the intervention of about 17 people, and in the Immunocal group, there was a dropout of about 15 people. And at the end of this study, we remeasured muscle strength and body composition for both groups. Now, how did we measure body composition? It was done with the reference in clinical study, which is called the DEXA, or the Dual Energy X-ray Absorptiometry. And this machine right here measures body weight, lean body mass, and fat mass at a very precise level. So that was done before and after the intervention for both groups. Thereafter, in terms of products, the casein group here took 20 grams of casein, and they also performed resistant training. They did it for 3 times a week for 135 days. And in the Immunocal group, they also took 20 grams per day, plus they also did resistant training for 3 times a week for 135 days. Now, I'd like to also point out that this was a quality study. That is, what we did was a comparison of 2 different products. Our goal here was to see if one product was better than the other one. For the resistant training program, what we did is we targeted all the major muscle groups. So specifically, we did leg press, we did chest press, we did lateral pull downs for the back, we did exercise for the triceps, an exercise here for the shoulders, as well as an exercise here for the biceps. So here are the results of this study in terms of what happened with the body composition. So here we have the casein group, and here we have the Immunocal group. And these are the values before the intervention and after the intervention for both groups. This is pre and post. So as you can see, this was an elderly population. We're talking about the mean age was around 70 years old. And here's the distribution of sex between men and women in this study. And it's important to note, so here's the females. There was more females in this study than males over here. So you see that in both groups that the women outnumber the men. And this is interesting here because it actually follows something that we see in the literature, that women usually tend to take care more of their health than men here. This is probably why they probably live longer than, at least in part, than men throughout a lifetime here. So this is something, a population that you can actually target. In terms of body weight and total lean body mass and fat mass, which is the measurements of body composition that we've done with the DEXA, what we can see here for both groups, pre-intervention and post-intervention, so this right here, these two, as well as these two, there was no increase or change, I would say, with their body weight for both groups. It did not change. Same thing with lean body mass, which is can consider their muscle mass. There also there was no change before and after in the casein group, as well as before and after for the immunocal group. In terms of fat mass, there too we did not see any significant changes in the casein group before and after the intervention. Same thing here with the immunocal group, no difference before and after with the fat mass in the immunocal group. So here is actually the main finding of the study. So we did measure muscle strength in both the casein and immunocal group. So the casein is the white and the immunocal is the blue. So here, if we look at the values before the study started, we can see that they started at the same point in terms of muscle strength. There was no difference between the group, which is good. That's what we wanted. And then afterward, what happens after the intervention? So in the casein group here in white, we see that there is a significant increase in muscle strength, which was expected. And however, in the immunocal group, we see that this increase in strength was a lot higher. We see that there was actually a 10% difference between the casein group and immunocal. So the immunocal group had a better increase in muscle strength than the casein group. So it outperformed it by about 10%. And this finding is an important finding, because if we look at this study here, it goes to show how important strength is. In this big study over here, it's very large. We're talking about over 142,000 participants that were recruited in 17 countries. And what they did is they did a 4-year follow-up with these participants. And what the study's objective was, it was to see what is the relationship between levels of grip strength here and different chronic diseases. So what they did is they recruited all these participants. And after that, they measured the grip strength using this piece of equipment here. And after that, what they did is they made 3 different groups. One group here, the one that you see with the blue here, was the participants that had the lowest muscle grip strength. The red one here was the individuals that had the middle grip strength, and the green one here was the people that had the highest grip strength. So these people here were the strongest, the green, and the people here in the blue were the weakest. And what they did is they followed them for 4 years, and then they looked what happened at the prevalence of different chronic diseases that you see over here. So if we take the first one here, which is myocardial infarction, we see here that the people who are the weakest, the prevalence here of this cardiovascular disease is a lot higher than the people here in the green, which is the strongest. So the people who are the strongest had less cardiovascular disease here than the people who were the weakest. And you see the same thing here with stroke. The people who are the strongest, less prevalence here of stroke than the people who are the weakest. It doesn't limit also to cardiovascular disease. We can also see this with other chronic diseases such as cancer. The people who are the strongest, they develop less cancer than the people who are the weakest. Same thing with respiratory problems. Them too, the people who are the strongest, less prevalence than the people who were the weakest. And you see the same thing for pneumonia, for fall, and for fractures. Every time the participants that were the strongest had less of this problem than the people who were the weakest. So this goes to show that muscle strength is an important parameter here to take into consideration, because it's associated with your health overall later in life. And also another important message is that it's never too late to start to do resistance training. Here in this study, what they did, they took individuals who were in their 90s, and we asked them to, and were asked actually to participate in a resistance training program or a muscular program. And what they did here is they actually did a resistance training program that was a pretty high intensity. We're talking about at least 80% of their 1 RM max, which is 80% of how much they can lift one time. So what they did is they did a resistance training program for 8 weeks, and then they measured their strength before and after, and they saw that even in people who were in their 90s were able to significantly increase the muscle strength. You can do it. And then they also looked at changes in muscle mass, and they looked at their total muscle mass at their quadricep and even at their hamstrings. And there as well, there was significant increases in all these three different muscles over here, and specifically the total muscle here. So the message I want to be able to say here is that you don't have to, at any age here, the effects of resistance training are there. So it's never too late to start. Now, what are the clinical implications and where can we go with this? So healthcare professionals can actually consider recommending the combination of resistance training and the cysteine-rich whey protein supplement immunotherapy when they're planning their nutritional and exercise intervention programs. And also, where can we go this? So a logical next step would be that taking the supplementation of immunotherapy plus resistance training, it will be interesting to see what happens in terms of long-term outcomes. And the long-term outcomes I'm thinking about here is more functional capacity, their quality of life, and specifically chronic diseases and mortality. Will you live longer? Will you have less chronic diseases by doing this sort of intervention? So that will be something that future studies can actually do. So I'd just like to finish off here of the importance of why we do research. And it's important to be able to, when you have a question and that we don't have a lot of information in, it's important to do a study on it. And the purpose of research is to correct perceptions. Specifically, we're here to offer we're here to offer solutions to problems that are must be based on knowledge. And this is key here. It must be based on results and knowledge, and not on beliefs or guesses, because this is something that we see a lot, specifically in the general population and even in gyms. I see that people try always to look at their own beliefs, and this is something that we have to be careful with, and we should always base it on scientific research. And at the end, the whole purpose of this is to be able to take this research and apply it to the general population, or to individuals, or even into a community. And the goal is always to improve the quality of life and the health of this individual. So I'd just like to thank Immunotech again and Mr. John Molson for allowing us to participate in the study, and also my colleague, Dr. Remy Wabizaloe, as well as personnel, and as well as the Institut de Recherche Clinique de Montréal, or the ERCM, where the study was actually performed. So at this time, if anybody has any questions, I guess there's a question period right now. We can take them.
Anthony, I'll make one comment. You can explain to all the participants who Dr. Remy Wabizaloe is after I just make this statement. I remember after we completed the study, and you can expand on this as well, he said to me, he said, you know, John, he said, many companies come to me with a problem to investigate, and the application, you know, is very esoteric and has no real benefit to society. He said, but you know, this study that we did is completely the opposite of that. It has such broad implications, and I always remember that statement, and coming from him, that was very meaningful. So maybe you can explain to all the participants who he is and kind of what he's saying.
Okay, yes.
With that statement.
So Dr. Remy Wabizaloe, he's a post colleague of mine. I've worked with him for many years, and he's a great colleague. He's a medical doctor, and he's one of those medical doctors that loves to do research. And it's important to him because he actually sees it. So he actually does the research and actually is able to see with his own eyes and to be able to recommend it and apply it, okay? Because that's important to him. And he's been doing this throughout his whole career. And with Immunotech, we had a great experience. And we saw this with the study that we did. So it was great working with him. It was great working with Immunotech. We had a great relationship, and at the end of the day, we're able to provide evidence and be able to show that what we did with this study, we were able to apply it to the general population, to the elderly specifically.
Yeah, and he's also, you can maybe, I mean, he's funded also by the NIH. I mean, he gets grants from a lot of different institutions.
Yes, he is well funded. He has maybe from NIH, even the CHR, which is equivalent to the NIH in Canada. He has a big laboratory. He has lots of personnel. He's well respected. He has tons and tons of publications, and it's always a pleasure working with him. And I will continue to be working with him.
So to me, you know, the compliment and the the quality of the compliment is always determined by the person giving a compliment. So to hear that coming from him, to me, is, I think we helped him, and we also helped answer some important questions about frailty, about aging, and providing seniors with some important information about how to improve the quality of the aging process.
Yes. I agree. It was a fun experience.
Well, John, do you have any questions?
I just had a couple of them, and I think you actually referenced this, Doctor, but if you could, just so everybody hears it a second time, the best time to start resistance training is as soon as possible. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, yes. So you want to start this early in life. You don't have to wait till there's a problem in your life. There's some kind of a health problem. And I know this in our society, we kind of tend to do something like that, but hopefully we can start changing that. It's important to be able to start early in life and be able to prevent something happening later in life. So we can start as early as possible. Changing lifestyle habits during resistance training here is something that I would recommend to people doing as early as possible, yes.
Great. Second question.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, Anthony, again, I mentioned that Dr. Droog was involved in the design of this study, and Dr. Droog was one of the scientists who characterized cachexia. And when you have this combination, he talked about cachexia and this process of unhealthy aging and how it impacts the elderly. And maybe we can just touch on this, that after the 4th and 5th decade of life, there are some subgroups of the population that lose muscle mass more quickly than the norm. And he explained to me that primarily you see this coming from the leg muscles. And so when you combine that loss of muscle mass in the leg muscles with loss of balance, that's why you have many seniors that become predisposed to falls. Oh, and so that's another another way to think about this in terms of not just being able to grip something, but also your stability as you age.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that you actually see in the elderly is this. Yes, so they can lose balance, and they're very fearful to fall. And if they're very fearful, they're going to immobilize them, so they're not going to get out and do something. And they need to be able to move and do something. So we have to help them actually preserve their muscle mass and the muscle strength in order to avoid all these problems and help them maintain as much quality of life as possible. And this can start very early on. You have to wait here to be able to do something like this. So the elderly population, there's a lot of now. This is a wide, most of North America now, the aging, there's an aging population here, and this is a actually good population to be able to target, to be able to help them maintain their muscle mass and strength in order to avoid any falls in their lifetime and cause injury. So this is a question also of improving the quality of life, because if they do fall, then they're going to always be afraid to be able to do something else.
So go ahead, Don.
That's so true, because I've watched only in my own family that my mother broke her hip early on. She was in her 50s and scared to death to do anything, and yet through the grace of God and Immunical, she made it to 92. However, my sister broke her hip, her elbow, and her shoulder 3 months ago, and has not only used Immunical prior to that, and continues obviously, but also has always been very involved in yoga, karate, etc., and is recovering very, very quickly with the attitude of how fast can I get back to doing what I used to do. And I think it's an attitude, certainly. But let me ask a different question, Doctor, if I can, along those lines. Obviously, we work with a lot of athletes. We've got a lot of athletes on the call today, all different types of athletes, from weekend warriors that are running, 5Ks and 10Ks to a lot of power lifters that are doing some crazy weights. Let's talk about the athlete for a second who wouldn't be in the 10% category in terms of strength gain, because obviously they're already pretty strong. But what does an athlete expect to gain when he or she starts to take Immunical at any age? What's been your experience in terms of their gain, somebody who's already at the, let's say, the 90-95% level of their strength capacity? What have you found in terms of their, strength increases?
So it's a good question. Again, this is not only limited to the elderly population, but also to the athletes. So there has been a study in the past that actually studied the effects of Immunical on muscle performance in younger athletes, and there too they showed that there was an improvement. So these individuals can also benefit from that. So it's not also the elderly. So this is something we can recommend pretty much, I guess, to any population. And you need to understand, any increase specific for the athlete is something positive. This could be a difference between first place and second place. So we need to understand, even if it might be smaller, it's still a gain, okay? And athletes are always looking for that. Just a little bit of a difference can make, like again, a gold medal or a silver medal. So we always have to look at turning every stone here to be looking at every single edge we can get out there. So if the Immunical can be able to provide that, then this is something that the athlete will be, I'm sure, happy with.
When we talk about the elderly, it's 1% of the population. When we talk about the whether it's the weekend warrior or the serious athlete that is perhaps doing some significant things in their training, the other 90% of the population, the person who maybe they've got a 9-to-5 job, they come home, they feed the kids, and they watch the TV instead of doing something. How does that person gain by maybe taking baby steps incrementally of starting to use Immunical, probably the easiest thing that they can do, and then going back to the gym?
So these people are probably also going to be the ones that are going to benefit more than the athletes, because if you're starting with a lower level over here and you're taking now, you're actually changing and you're doing an intervention, you're actually going to be able to have significant gains, especially in the beginning. So these people here are actually going to see that something is happening, and it again gains, and then they'll be able probably want to continue doing something like this. So they're also going to get. We also need to understand that there's with Immunical, there's a powerful antioxidant, the glutathione, that's going to be in the system, and this is also associated with a better health outcomes later on in life. So this is like a kind of where I was talking about prevention. If you start taking it at 40, 50, or 60 years old, this will help you later on to be able to prevent disabilities and reduce your quality of life. So this is what you want to try and avoid. So these people are actually the ones that you want to be able to target by telling them, hey, listen, you got to start now, because later down, if you don't do anything later down the road, that's where all the things are going to happen. It may be too late for some of you. So might as well start now taking care of your health before it's too late.
When somebody has had an injury, a sports-related injury or perhaps not, a car accident, whatever, what do you recommend in terms of dosage, in terms of how to use Immunical to recover from knee surgery, back surgery, whatever it happens to be, be they in the athletic world or they be in this, the senior population that you've been working with?
So in terms of dosage, what should it be able to be taken in terms of the protein intake?
Right. Both protein intake and also sachets of Immunical.
So I would say about 20 grams that we've seen that is something that they can actually maintain their muscle mass and their muscle strength. There has been dose-dependent studies too that I've seen that can go from 20 to 30 even to 40. So up to 40 grams here can actually also help you increase your muscle mass and muscle strength. Usually for the athletes, they want to be, if you want to give another way of seeing the numbers, about 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight protein till up to 1.6. This is when the range where you actually can see benefits in terms of muscle strength and muscle mass. So anywhere between 20 and 40 grams, I would say, of the packs of the supplementation will actually show some gains.
Great, and I think, Doctor,
Anthony, thank you very, very much. Yes, the thing that struck me most was the importance of what a 10% increase
we talk about what that increment means. For example, the difference between being in bed and being in a wheelchair. Can you just address what 10% means to an elderly person who is challenged with muscle strength for whatever reason?
Yeah. So what we did here in the study, we see a 10% increase, which we use a statistical analysis to be able to say, okay, this was a 10%, which is very significant in terms of mathematical terms. But however, you can also look at it in clinical significance. Usually, a clinical significance, anything that is an increase of about 5% can be you can be said that this is a clinically significant. So yes, so that in itself can be someone who will be able to be functional or not functional. Because the elderly, a functional capacity is a real problem. So will they be able to walk properly? Will they be able to take the stairs? Will they be able to just go to the supermarket and back and lift bags? So it could be that the difference between that. And someone who is elderly, and it's a question of independence at the end. So if you're able to gain your independence over here, this is a very significant step here for an elderly individual. Because if there's nobody else around to help them, I mean, they're going to have a very tough time here. So functional, being functional here, and this is where the muscle strength here will help an individual. The stronger they are, the more capable they'll be able to do things in their life, or else it will be limited.
Yes, because as you know, Anthony, my background is in emergency medicine, so I tend to be more practical than scientific. So making that translation to a functional application, like maintaining a person's independence, ability to take care of themselves at home, this for the layperson is a very real, tangible difference. And I think John Molson also alluded to the fact that for someone working in the emergency department, we're going to see that difference in 10% strength by the amount of people that come in with hip fractures or wrist fractures, or any other tumbles or spills, or even burns that are a result of loss of muscle strength and independence. So your research has really added to the entirety of this field of glutathione augmentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, it's Sue Zach here. While we wait for them to get back, I'm going to tell you a little ditty. I have an oldie, 5 years old, great aunt. She had been on Immunical quite a while. And so she started to complain and said to me, I'm 95 years old. How am I going to die? I got no diseases. What am I going to do? So she hung around for a while longer, and, you know, she had a bit of gout, but on the whole, she was doing really good. And finally, at 102, she says to me, can I get off this stuff now? All my friends are gone. So talk about quality of life, that she got to live to a ripe old age. And within 3 months of getting off her Immunical, her memory started to go, and she passed within like 7 months. So anti-aging, quality of life, this is a great product for that. Back to whoever.
I think we are up to Dr. McTavish is where we are here. Is Dr. McTavish with us?